coming back for part 8. But what I was saying was, when you choose to step out from under the covering of God, you gonna step into some mess. It's what's gonna happen. You're not gonna be able to avoid it. It's what happens. You will step into something you did not mean to step into. Why? Because you wanted to do it your way. And you stepped out from under the covering of God. Her husband was her covering. If he wasn't paying her any attention, then that was the problem in that. She needed to focus on her home. She was focused on trying to get her career, which brings me back to what I've been saying about the chess game. When you're playing chess, you are the queen. You stand next to the king. You start sending pawns and other potential board members on your side of the board into enemy territory because you are trying to operate in control. Meaning, your god-ordained spouse may have people behind him. If you start directing them in the wrong direction, you're pulling them that are also meant to be protection to your god-ordained spouse away from your spouse. And then you sitting up there trying to run to get to what it is that God done called you to do and not listening because your spouse already done gave you the instruction. What did the husband say towards the beginning of the film when she first started asking about counseling? He said, not right now. How many times has God told you not right now? But if you're on the chessboard, watch me carefully. You're on the chessboard as the queen and you start moving away from the king because you're trying to pursue your own wants and desires. I told you this when I was watching the episode of SVU, which I mentioned in the episode Fear, False Evidence Appearing Real. You can't allow your desire for elevation, because this is what the woman was telling her. You can't allow the desire for elevation, promotion, to smokescreen your understanding of people. Because that's exactly what this woman did. She stopped paying attention to the people that she was dealing with and were around her. And she's trying to get across this board in order to get to this marriage counseling thing. And guess what? She left her husband wide open. She done screwed up the entire group of people. Okay? Trying in pursuit of something that the Lord was going to give her. He just wasn't giving it to her yet. A lot of you have had to go through process and pruning, and you had to go through level by level by level by level by level by level. I did a word on this a while ago, talking about elevation that feels like you're elevating, but it feels like you're drifting to one side. The elevation doesn't feel like you're going up. It feels like you're going this way. And it's slow. It's a slow incline. She was slowly inclining. But she trying to rush to get up the ladder to where she trying to go. And then look at what she done did. Look what she did. She done messed herself up. She messed up her testimony. She messed up her situation. I'm not talking about the minister that messed up her situation. I'm talking about the woman in this movie. What that woman did, the minister that has her own business, she did that, and she used that as a testifying point. She had the ability to make a decision, and she openly said, I could have chose to do differently. And this is where she was in repentance about. But this woman didn't even have the repentance about the situation. Let's continue to find out what else she did, okay? So I'm actually going to do a sidestep, and I want to talk about the movie Devil Wears Prada. Because similar thing happened to this young woman in that movie. The woman came into a company just like this woman came into a company. She was like, but this woman, she came in as like the geeky kid. This woman always plays the geeky person. She comes in, She's trying to figure things out. She walking around. It's the same type of scenario. She comes in. She doesn't even know how to know the dress code. Everybody's looking at her like, oh my God, you don't even know how to dress, girl. So she ends up eventually deciding to also go to the closet and get a full clothing makeover. And her boyfriend is like, oh, look at you changing. But her friends also begin to notice her change is not making a constant positive impact on her. And here comes this guy who's seeking her, but in this case, this guy is seeking her to gain access to information about her boss because she's the new assistant. So he wants to find out what she knows about the business. So she ends up getting closer and she starts doing certain things that she would not consider them to be a bad thing, but she literally ended up taking the first assistant spot. And she didn't do it on purpose. She did it because of the fact that the first assistant got lazy. Let me tell you something. If you're in a position, God has sat you there. He sat you there for a reason. Some of your husbands are in situations like this, where they are sitting in places that they are waiting for their elevation. And they got distracted while they were waiting on elevation. Let's just be honest. They are Davids that are sitting as Saul's armor bearer, waiting to be elevated to king. That's literally what they're doing in some cases. So this woman, she comes in, becomes vicious about the way that she goes about making sure that whatever this woman wants, she gets it. At first, it took her a minute to get a hang of it, but then she got it. And then once she got it, she starts doing things that cause the actual first assistant to be demoted. And the first assistant got sick. She caught a cold. She was ill. And she ended up taking care of something that assistant needed, or the first assistant was supposed to know, because she ended up catching a cold and forgot some of the names of the people from the party that her boss was supposed to know. And she was able to tell her all that stuff, which made the first assistant get demoted to becoming the second assistant. And she ended up becoming the first assistant. And then when that original first assistant ended up getting injured because she was rushing and got hit by a car, she now no longer can take that position. And the woman turns to her and says, but don't you recognize? Do you see what you done did? You stole my spot. Some of y'all, and it's not that you're doing it out of a vindictive place, but you gonna learn the game so well that people gonna be looking at you like you done stole this person's spot. No, you didn't. You didn't do that. God moved you there so that when the time came, that person was going to be demoted. In that film, the woman, this is a whole nother thing. That woman ended up getting the spot of the first assistant. The last shall be first. She was the secondary assistant. And when she came in, the first assistant started to decline. This is how you're going to elevate. Okay? That's a little test of elevation. That wasn't my point for bringing this in here. When I was bringing this in here, I was bringing in the factor that the guy that started talking to her about the magazine that she was assisting in running, he wanted information. So he ends up whining and dining her when her and her relationship with the guy that she'd been with for years starts to decline because she's spending too much time at work. This guy keeps coming in. Same way Harley did, keeps coming in. And he's not coming in because he's interested, but he's using the same ploy that Harley did, just not as intently. He's not coming for her. He's coming for her for information. People will do this to you. Also be aware of this. Understand that's an attack too. He came at her for information so that he could gain access. She goes all the way to Paris. They were there for a business trip. But this guy goes out to drinks with her and she gives it up to him. Meaning, not only the information, but she also sleeps with him. Just like this woman. Turns around and sleeps with the guy. But, she comes up the next day and realizes this guy had a portfolio full of documents about the other opposing magazine, which was called Runway. And it was that element of, hold up, you played me. He said, yeah, I needed the information so that I could take that back to my boss so that I could get a raise. What was all of this about? It's about coming to the understanding when you do something the wrong way, it's not going to come out good for you, okay? Trying to circumvent the process is going to lead you into a trap. Both of these women ended up being led into a trap, and they both gave their bodies up to these men. Okay? Which brings me to the next point of this thing. Hold up. So, this guy is having, in the film, Temptations of a Marriage Counselor, this guy got her traveling. They done bought clothes together. They done got her look all nice. They done bought her a location. And I have to be honest with you. Let me take a pause here. How she know that dude bought the stuff? Was there legal documents to say he bought it? And then again, maybe he just bought it and decided to keep it for himself. Because think about it like this. If this guy ain't doing nothing but trying to seduce her so he can sleep with her and she done begged to be with him, you think he really keeping that stuff for her? For real. When he's just using her as a play toy. Do you really think he keeping that? Or he just showing it to her so that her big eyes will actually be like, ooh, I'm going to get what I want. Which also showed where her heart lied, because that was all she was really after. She didn't really want the job, no way. She was in an element that she turned around and she's like, I don't care. She went back to her own daggone husband and said, I don't care, I'm leaving. And her husband's sitting up there like, excuse me, what are you talking about? What? I love you. What are you saying? And we ain't even gotten there yet. He sees her get in the car with old boy and he's like, something ain't right here. So he goes back to work and he's talking to the woman that he worked with that just started, and she's been kind of a little trepidatious, and he trying to figure out what her issue is. And she says she's been hinting that something went on in a previous relationship that she's been trying to get away from. Okay? So getting back to the wife. The wife, she's sitting up there. She done got the clothes. She been sleeping with Harley. She been doing all of this. And then she turn around and tell the boss, I quit. And the boss is like, what are you talking about? She's like, I resign. I quit. I'm done with this. I'm going to go and I'm going to start my own practice. And let me tell you something about this boss. This boss is like a mid 50-year-old woman that looks, she tries to make herself look as presentable with this fake French accent and all this kind of stuff. But this woman she was not born yesterday. She ain't stupid, and she far from it. She far from it. I don't care how she look. She is so far from not being stupid. As soon as she walked up in there talking that foolishness, even her face, the boss's face went. You slept with him. Because she knew. She know him. For one, that dude's a client with her matchmaking company. So she probably done seen this dude do this to women multiple times before. And I don't know what agreement she had with him that she was allowing this thing to happen anyway. But she told her not to get involved with this guy. And this person, comes in. You ever see somebody, they think that they won the lottery and they come in and they start screaming at somebody and telling them how they really feel and all this type of stuff. It was on their heart in the first place, but now they feel like they got it like that. So they're going to turn around and they're going to tell you what they really feel about you. That's exactly what this woman is. Let me tell you something. You're a Christian, okay? You may feel whatever you feel. But you got to know your boundary and you got to know your place. Let me explain something to you about this young woman. This woman ain't never experienced life before. And the fact of the matter is, she thought that she had a one up because she got hooked up with this man. And the woman who has life experience, that owns this company, that got it the way that she got it, sat up there and looked at her and said, I told you not to get involved with this man. And she ain't listening because she's in her, one, she's under her spirit of witchcraft. Two, she's in her, I want to do this all myself. I'm going to do this. I'm going to prove to you. I'm a. That roll your neck. Sit your behind down because you in the middle of a process. And because she sat up there and tried to circumvent, she burning bridges. Don't burn bridges that you can't afford to burn, okay? Because when you burn bridges you can't afford to burn, guess what? You can't go back across them. So that woman listens to her whole spiel and she tries to give her a bit of advice. The woman don't want to hear it. And then turns around and immaturely tells her, oh, girl, you from this part of New York. So get rid of that dumb fake French accent. She got the wrong spirit in her heart. She was never fully committed to God in the first place. God will show you the part of a person, okay? So she leaves her job that day and she goes, I don't know whether she stopped by the house at this point or what, but something makes her husband, I can't quite remember how this sequence went, but the fact of the matter is she in this spiral. Her husband sees her with Harley. She goes to the club with him that night. Her husband tracks them and ends up at the club finding out she in there on coke. She up there snorting coke with him and two other white women. So there's your problem right there. She done allowed the spirit of pharmakia next to the love spells and all of the sexual immorality and all of that to come in. So she up there doing drugs. When pharmakia, let me explain something to you about the spirit of pharmakia. This is drugs, alcohol, smoking, all this kind of stuff. When you're under the influence of alcohol, you start acting and speaking like how you truly feel. If you're feeling good in that moment, you're going to talk about how good you feel. If you're angry and you were suppressing it, look, your filter gone. If you were this way, your filter gone. Now, next to that, drugs. If you're under the influence of drugs, I saw somebody under the influence of drugs, and what ended up happening is their mind was so gone while under the influence of whatever they took. Not only were they honest, but they were slurring their speech. It's a spirit, okay? You are spiritually opening yourself up to anything. You can say anything, do anything. You ain't gonna know what you did because you're not here no more. What is occupying your mind is not a spirit of consciousness. You are no longer conscious under the influence of drug or alcohol. And if you got the combination, guess what? So she done committed 3 cardinal sins. She done committed lust. She done gave into lust and perversion. She done sat up there and gave into drugs and alcohol. Because she was snorting coke. And then when the husband comes in, he's like, oh my God, what are you doing? I came here for my wife. And Harley's like, what are you doing? What you up to? What is this? And he's like, what you gonna do, boo? What you doing? And she's like, let me take care of this. And she actually think that she the chick in this. And he got two other hoes sitting right there. Sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't say that word as a Christian. But it's the truth. That's what they were. Then they go outside and the wife is like, what are you doing? Get your hands off of me. Oh my God. She acted all out of it. She on the drugs. She on that coke. She been snorting that stuff. I remember sitting and watching the documentary of Janet Jackson. And she talked about the fact of seeing men that she was in relationship with under the influence of drugs, and how sad it was to watch them, because she had always loved these people, but the drugs that they were under the influence of, she couldn't compete with that. And it was sad to watch her tell that part of the story, because you're not dealing with a person, you're dealing with a spirit. Spirits are strong. That's a stronghold. And it's a bit of a principality, if I'm going to be honest with you. Look at society right now. Everybody's on drugs now. It has been legalized to do marijuana. So, with that being said, you gotta look at all of that stuff. And she turned around and told her husband how she truly felt about him too. She sat up there and said, you are too nice and that and the other thing. And you know what? I like you, but this is whatever. We had a great time together, but you know what? I'm over it. And she literally told this to her husband. Her husband. This is her husband. And he's like, what are you doing? Honey, what are you doing? I'm your husband. How can you do this to me? I'm your husband. And he's like, she's so far gone. For one, she's under the influence of the drug. So because she's under the influence of the drug, he could have talked to her till his face turned blue. She wasn't going to hear him because the drug is what's between them right now. Okay? If you know, and I deal with people that have certain proclivities, whether it be drug or alcohol, you got to pray for that person in relation to them spirits being broken, because that's a heavy principality for that person to be dealing with. That has to be broken off of them. Broken off of them. It's not something that can just be, oh, I'm gonna pray for you. Oh, you got to do war for these principalities to be broken. Because guess what? The enemy will use that as a wall to put between you and your spouse. Every time you're trying to talk, every time something, they'll either have them drinking, or when you think that you want to talk to them, they'll be under the influence of the drug. And you'll know because of the depths of their incoherence. Okay? If they're clear-headed, guess what? They're not on anything. So you got to pray. You really got to pray to cover, because the enemy will use that too. And if this is a proclivity that they had, guess what? When you get into the marriage, they may still be dealing with separating themselves from that. And because of that, the enemy will use, whenever he can, try to slip that in there to become a wedge between the two of y'all. So that when you're trying to talk something serious with them, they'll be under the influence of something, and then they can't hear you. It's going to be a fight. So you got to pray. You got to pray and cover that man, especially if you have any knowledge that they have any of these types of proclivities, okay? Because that's a strong one, that deep prayer is about the only thing that's going to help you. Then when it came down to her and her mama, She had stopped by the I think it was like the next day after she done had this argument. And when she had that argument, she must have went back and called the husband must have went back and called the mama, because when she came by the house to grab her computer, the mama sitting in there with a prayer circle doing prayer visual for her. And she's like, oh, Lord Jesus, let me just go in here and get my computer. She went in there and grabbed the computer, and she trying to leave. And the mother says, what in the world are you doing? And she's like, I'm getting my computer and I'm leaving. I'm done. Bye. And she's like, what the heck is wrong with you? What is wrong? For one, talking to her mother like this. Two, she's sitting up there like, I'm going to do what I want. And that's the way she's at her attitude. I'm going to do what I want to do. And her mother goes to grab her, and she fights and pushes her mother back. And her mother yells at her, that boy gonna drag you straight to hell. And she don't care. She walk out. She don't even see if her mama all right. She walk out. She goes back to the apartment, and once she's at the apartment, Harley's in there, and she's in the closet doing something, and I don't know whether she got another hit of the coke or what it was, but her and Harley end up in an argument about something. Here goes his temper again, and he goes and says something to her, but because he's also under the influence of drugs, hello, turns around, something she responds to him he does not like. He turns around and hits her so hard. Then the next thing you know, he's grabbing her and choking her and shaking her and taking her into the bathroom. And the next thing you know, he beating her severely. You see him beating her severely. Don't leave your covering for something stupid. This guy is beating on her now. So this guy got a spirit of a madman, obsessive, abusive, compulsive, narcissistic man beater or woman beater. But hey, she done stepped out of her marriage, so her covering is no longer there. I'm going to cut this off and I'll come right back.